Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Today's topic is undoubtedly heavy and sad for many, as Fred Weasley is one of the most beloved characters in the Harry Potter universe. This is why so many fans bombarded J.K. Rowling with questions about why she decided that Fred had to die and whether it was truly necessary. Today, we will explore why and how Fred Weasley met his end. Fred's death is truly perceived as a significant loss, as throughout so many books, he and his brother George managed to create an incredible image of spectacular twins. They exemplify how a sense of humor can help overcome difficulties, face challenges together, enjoy life, and always try to find the positive side of any event. Despite their sharp minds and natural talents, they could perform quite complex spells even at the age of 5. They didn't become careerists driven by ambition. These two were always together from birth, making it difficult to imagine that one day they might go their separate ways. And of course, we couldn't even entertain the thought that at some point one of them would die, leaving the other alone. We couldn't believe it. But not J.K. Rowling. It turns out that Rowling had known about Fred's fate for a very long time, and was aware from the moment she started writing the first book that one of the twins would inevitably die. Moreover, she always knew it would be Fred. I always knew it was going to be Fred, and I couldn't honestly tell you why. Fred is normally the funnier, but also the crueler of the two, so they might have thought that George would be the more vulnerable one, and therefore the one to die. But it was definitely something I didn't enjoy doing. It was awful killing Fred. I hated that. So poor Fred's fate was written even before his character began to evolve. J.K. Rowling. This shows how much attention Rowling pays to each character and how meticulously she plans every moment of a character's death. You may also know that Arthur Weasley was originally meant to die during the story, but at the last moment Rowling changed her mind, and instead Remus Lupin died. Interestingly, many fans agreed with Rowling that it would have been unfair to remove Arthur from the story, as he is practically the only example of a true good father. Moreover, Molly had already lost 2 of her brothers, Fabian and Gideon, in the First Wizarding War, and Arthur's death would have been a devastating blow for her. But we know of another person who was devastated and crushed by Fred's death, and that, of course, is George. It's known that George never fully recovered after his brother's death and couldn't return to being the person we once knew. On that day, a part of George died with Fred. It's evident that the bond between twins is much stronger than between ordinary brothers, even those close in age. When looking at twins, it's hard to imagine one without the other, and therefore, the loss of one twin inevitably affects the other deeply, as their bond is incredibly strong. Looking back, we can say with confidence that George's post-Hogwarts life turned out to be fairly happy. He has a loving wife and son, and he enjoys the work that not only brings him income, but also joy and satisfaction. However, his entire fate was forever altered by the absence of the person who had always been by his side. What's interesting is that Rowling intentionally didn't make Fred's death heroic, special, or triumphant, as was the case with Snape or Sirius. He died in an explosion that destroyed part of the castle. Rowling says that at that moment it was more significant for her not what caused Fred's death, but how he died. If you recall, the book mentions that even in death, his face retained a smile and the echo of recent laughter. Even at the moment of his death, it was as if he continued to tell everyone around him that life goes on, and that he was happy to have done everything he could to ensure that the world he loved so much would continue to live on. It seems that for Fred, this was truly the best outcome. He wasn't meant to die in the spotlight, surrounded by triumph and victories. The author apparently didn't want to make this moment overly special or dramatic. Rowling says that not every beloved character must die heroically, because a heroic death distances us from reality, as in truth, such deaths are very rare. Moreover, what remains most important is the impact a character leaves on life and in our hearts. After the tragic death of Fred Weasley, many fans wondered why he became a casualty in the Battle of Hogwarts. This moment left a deep mark on the hearts of fans, but even after his death, Fred's memory continues to live on. To honor his legacy and better understand the kind of person he was, let's take a look at some interesting fact numbers about the lives and adventures of Fred and George Weasley, which made them beloved characters for millions of readers and viewers. Fact number 1. Date of birth and character. Being born on April 1st, April Fool's Day, is already a joke of fate. Fred and George Weasley seem to have been born for laughter. Their birthday is not just a date, it's a symbol of fun, mischief, and the ability to turn any situation into an opportunity for a joke. From childhood, the Weasley twins stood out among their peers. Their love for pranks was unrelenting. Any mischief they pulled off was a small work of art. Remember their Weasley's Wildfire Whiz-Bangs or Canary Creams? These inventions turned everyday life at Hogwarts into a true festival of jokes. Harry Potter's first day at Hogwarts is a perfect example. The twins, with serious faces, advised him to run and jump through the barrier at platform 9 3/4. Harry, trembling with nerves, did just that. And to his surprise, he found out they weren't joking. This time, this is classic Fred and George, a joke that skirts the edge of truth. But behind every laugh was a strong brotherly love. George once said, "If you weren't my brother, I'd kill you." Fred replied, "But I still love you, George." And in these short lines lies the essence of their bond. For them, joking wasn't just a game, it was a way of expressing care and affection. Fact number 2. Fred as the older brother, Fred Weasley is the older of the twins. J.K. Rowling confirmed this in a tweet, and fans quickly noticed that Fred was always the leader. The difference is just a few minutes, but those minutes made him first in everything. Fred was the one who came up with ideas first and took risks. When Harry first met the twins on platform 9 3/4, it was Fred who joked first, introducing himself as George. He immediately set the tone for their interaction, showing his confidence and leadership. This is especially noticeable in the films. The first joke from the twins is his too. Fred leads and George follows. This dynamic duo became what it was thanks to Fred's courage. When it was time to leave Hogwarts in The Order of the Phoenix, Fred was the first to act. He threw the hook and challenged Umbridge. His leadership and willingness to take risks made their plan a success. The idea to open Weasley's Wizard Wheezes also belonged to Fred. He didn't wait for the right moment, he created it himself. His drive for independence made him the driving force in their partnership. Fact number 3. The principle of stronger together. Fred and George Weasley were inseparable. Their strength lay in their unity, and this was evident in everything they did. They complemented each other, creating a unique tandem. In jokes, business, even in battle, they were a single entity. Each could have been successful on their own, but together they were truly magical. Their bond was so deep that they understood each other without words. Fred would bring the ideas and George would develop them. They worked in sync, like two halves of a whole. This magic of unity was evident in everything, from their inventions to their teamwork on the battlefield. But when they were separated, it became clear how dependent they were on each other. The first tragic separation occurred when George lost his ear. It was not just a physical injury, but an emotional blow. George, always used to being with his brother, felt incomplete for the first time. The loss of his ear symbolized the beginning of the end for their duo. George joked, "How will I tell my left from my right now?" But there was pain in those words. It was the first blow to their unbreakable bond. But the true blow came when Fred died. In the Battle of Hogwarts, their duo was destroyed forever. George lost not just a brother, he lost a part of himself. Fred's death left a void that nothing could ever fill. Fact number 4. Role in the Quidditch team. Fred and George Weasley were not just jokesters, they were also Quidditch stars at Hogwarts. As beaters, they were the heart of the Gryffindor team. Their coordinated play turned every match into an exciting show, where their brotherly bond was their main weapon. On the field, they acted as a single unit. Fred and George knew each other's every move, making their play almost unpredictable for opponents. Their ability to hit bludgers with incredible speed and accuracy instilled fear even in the most experienced players. Although both brothers were excellent beaters, George stood out with his exceptional technique. He was more precise, often hitting bludgers with such accuracy that spectators were left in awe. George always found himself where he was needed, blocking attacks with flawless precision. The statistics spoke for themselves. George hit twice as many bludgers as Fred. This didn't diminish Fred's contributions, but it highlighted George's unique skills. His sense of the game and ability to predict opponents' moves made him an invaluable player. In one match against Slytherin, George demonstrated true mastery. When two Slytherin beaters simultaneously attacked Harry, George instantly hit both bludgers, saving the match and securing Gryffindor's victory. This moment became legendary and cemented his status as one of the best beaters. Fact number 5. The cause of Ron's arachnophobia. Fred Weasley was always a master of pranks, even as a child, but one of his pranks left a deep mark on Ron's life. When Fred was only 5 years old, he decided to teach his younger brother a lesson for breaking his toy broomstick. Little Fred took Ron's teddy bear and turned it into a spider. This innocent prank became the cause of a fear that haunted Ron for life. Ron was terrified. He never expected his beloved toy to turn into something so creepy. Little Ron screamed in fear, and that moment was forever etched in his memory. From that time on, spiders became his worst nightmare. Even years later, when he was an adult, the fear never left him. Fred, being only 5, didn't realize how strong an impression his prank would make. To him it was just fun. But for Ron, it was the beginning of a long and torturous fear. In the book, The Chamber of Secrets, Ron confesses to Harry that he can't even look at spiders, recalling that incident. Of course, Fred didn't intend to harm Ron. But this incident became a lesson for the whole family. Even the most innocent pranks can have serious consequences. This moment also highlighted how early Fred's magical talent manifested. At 5, he could already perform magic, foreshadowing his future as a master prankster. Fact number 6. The twins' inventions. Fred and George Weasley were not just jokesters, they were true inventors. Their talent for creating magical novelties first emerged at Hogwarts. One of their early masterpieces was the Weasleys' Wildfire Whiz-Bangs, sweets that caused short-term but spectacular symptoms like nosebleeds or paralysis. These pranks quickly became popular. They realized that their inventions could be not only fun, but also useful. This led to the birth of their famous shop, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. The shop became a hit, attracting students and adult wizards alike. The product range included not only jokes, but also serious protective items, like enchanted hats that turned into steel helmets. Their most sought-after products were the line of clothing with shield charms. This protection became especially popular in the Ministry of Magic, where employees needed extra security. In the fight against Voldemort, such clothing became indispensable. What's surprising is that Fred and George achieved success despite their poor school grades. They often neglected their studies in favor of their inventions, But this didn't stop them from becoming magical geniuses. Their story shows that passion and creativity can outweigh any academic achievements. Once, while demonstrating a new product, the extendable ears, small devices for eavesdropping, Fred couldn't hide his smile. He knew that their inventions amazed and delighted people. Such moments proved how far they had come from simple school pranks. Low grades didn't prevent the brothers from proving that success comes to those who are willing to take risks and think outside the box. The shop became a symbol of their relentless pursuit of innovation and desire to surprise. Their magic was not only in spells, but in their approach to life, always forging their own path. Fact number 7. Fred's boggart. Fred Weasley, always full of courage and humour, also had his fears. His greatest fear was Voldemort. When Fred encountered a boggart, it took the form of the Dark Lord. This showed that even the bravest can be afraid. For Fred, Voldemort was not just an enemy, but the embodiment of evil, threatening everything he loved. This fear wasn't just for himself, but for his family, friends, and everyone dear to him. Although Fred seemed fearless, he understood how dangerous Voldemort was. When the boggart appeared before him in the form of Voldemort, Fred felt his vulnerability. It was a moment of truth. But as a true Weasley, he didn't let fear take over. With humour and determination, Fred managed to stand up to even such a horror. Fred knew that laughter was the best defence against fear. Even in the face of Voldemort, he found the strength not to panic. His ability to turn fear into something less terrifying was his greatest weapon. This helped him maintain his strength of spirit. This fear always stayed with him, but Fred didn't let it control his life. He understood that the fear of Voldemort wasn't a weakness, but an awareness of the danger. This made him vigilant and ready to protect his loved ones. Fred never showed this fear to those around him, hiding it behind jokes and laughter. But it was there, reminding him of what he was fighting for. The fear of Voldemort became his motivator, pushing him to fight against the dark forces. The boggart in the form of Voldemort showed that behind Fred's outward lightheartedness was a deep concern for his family and friends. This fear made him even more determined and brave. He knew that he couldn't let evil win. Fact number 8. George's Patronus. After Fred's death. After Fred's death, George Weasley's world fell apart. The loss of his brother left a void that nothing could fill. They were inseparable, and with his departure, George lost not only a brother, but a part of himself. One of the most painful consequences was that George could no longer summon his Patronus. Before, his Patronus was a symbol of light and joy, but now that magic was gone. Without Fred, he couldn't find the strength to conjure it. Each attempt to summon his Patronus led George to disappointment. Instead of the usual bright light, he felt only emptiness. The Patronus required positive memories, but all his joyful moments were tied to Fred, and now they only brought pain. Before this, George was the embodiment of optimism. His Patronus was strong and bright, reflecting their brotherly bond. But with Fred's loss, that strength disappeared. It seemed that part of his magic died along with his brother. For George, this became a symbol of how much his life had changed. The Patronus, which had been a symbol of their strength and joy, was now inaccessible. Each attempt to summon it reminded him that he was no longer whole. The Weasley twins had always been together. Even their magic was connected. Losing Fred broke that bond, and George's Patronus disappeared along with it. This was a vivid example of how deep their connection was and how devastating the loss was. Each failed attempt brought pain. George realized that his life would never be the same again. The magic that once brought joy now only heightened his loneliness. Fact number 9. The twins were not prefects. Fred and George Weasley always followed their own path. Unlike their brothers, Percy and Bill, they were never prefects. The title simply didn't suit their spirit. Instead of following rules, they preferred to break them, bringing joy and laughter to every corner of Hogwarts. The Weasley twins were incredibly smart and inventive, but seriousness and discipline were not their style. When Professor McGonagall announced the new prefects, no one expected Fred and George to be among them. Even the twins themselves knew it wasn't their path. They chose the role of informal leaders, whose strength lay in their ability to lift spirits and inspire others. Percy, who became a prefect, was proud of his badge, but Fred and George only teased him. For them, the title of prefect didn't matter. They saw it only as a limitation on their freedom, and freedom was their most cherished value. Instead, they preferred to break the rules, creating chaos and fun. Despite lacking the title, their influence on the school was enormous. Fred and George were leaders in their own way, leading others not with a badge, but by example. Their courage and independence impressed many, and they inspired students to be themselves, even if it meant going against the rules. Prefects maintained order, while Fred and George ensured that life at Hogwarts wasn't boring. They were busy creating Weasley's wildfire whiz-bangs or pulling pranks on Slytherins. Their contribution to school life was informal, but just as important. They proved that you can be a leader without wearing a badge. Fact number 10. The grand exit from Hogwarts. Fred and George Weasley always planned their departure from Hogwarts to be something grand. Their final year at school was dedicated to preparing for this moment. They knew that their exit had to become legendary, and they did it with style. When Harry Potter needed to sneak into Umbridge's office, the brothers saw an opportunity. They didn't just help him, but they also put on a show. Turning the corridor into a swamp was their final act. It was more than just a joke. It was their statement, a challenge to the system. The swamp appeared suddenly and caught everyone off guard. Umbridge and Filch desperately tried to drain it, but the swamp resisted. Their failures only added to the students' amusement. It was a reminder that Umbridge's power was not absolute. Even after Umbridge's departure, the swamp remained. Professor Flitwick, with respect for their mischief, left a small portion of it intact. It became a kind of monument to the brothers' creativity and spirit of freedom. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope this means you found it interesting. If so, don't forget to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel.